Well, surprise, surprise to those who will be watching live. It's Jared Yates Sexton, one of our all-time favorites. Been way too long, and I said, I really have to talk to you. And he said, I'm busy. I said, please. And he said, okay. Great to see you.
I have never once in my entire life. You know what's funny about that, Pete? There are certain people I will not do interviews with based on ideological purposes. But anybody that I trust, there's only been one that I've really missed, and it's because I fell down the stairs.
What?
I was like going to record, and I fell down the stairs.
When?
Oh God, I don't know. It was a few months back.
Oh, how
I would
humiliating.
never say no.
To fall down stairs is like it's not something you tell people. I mean, it happens.
I didn't expect to talk about it today, but you had to make the joke, and everybody knows I am a good codependent boy who would never say I'm busy.
What did you say to whoever you had to cancel on? Did you be like, listen, I had an accident. I fell down the stairs. Yes. I went tumbly.
I had to, it was one of those moments. I'm sure you've had it where you're like, I might have broken every single bone.
Yeah.
I don't want to move yet. And then you start moving the limbs a little bit, another. And then I texted and I was like, I fell down the stairs.
I can't do this interview. I fell down the stairs.
I literally fell down the stairs.
I'm such a media whore. I would if I couldn't move my legs, I would just set the camera up as I'm lying at the bottom of the stairs. But like, yeah, live. We're live.
You know what I was thinking about? I forgot about this, and this is a little anecdote that I'll share. I wouldn't share this anywhere else except for stand up. So back in what was it, 2016 or 2017? I forget. There was a solar eclipse at that point. And the day of the solar eclipse, I believe it was Ari Melber invited me on MSNBC. Nobody's going to be watching the news. They're all outside looking at the solar eclipse. So and this was back in the day, Pete, where you had to drive to a studio. You couldn't just do it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, before COVID and before Zoom and all that.
Yeah, I drove down to Jacksonville 2.5 hours for literally no one to watch. And I stopped during the solar eclipse on the highway. I didn't have any glasses or anything. I was just like, screw it. How many solar eclipses am I going to see?
Yeah.
And I looked right directly at the sun, which you're not supposed to do. And then I went on MSNBC with sun-shaped holes burned out of my eyes, and as I did that MSNBC hit, I thought, I ruined my eyes forever.
You really damaged your eyes looking at the sun.
I thought I damaged it. It took a couple of days. I can't believe I'm telling this story. It took a couple of days for the things to stop, but I was on MSNBC live thinking, this is my life from now on. I burned out my eyes looking at the solar eclipse.
That's crazy. That story.
True story. And then years later, when everyone's like, Donald Trump looked at the eclipse without glasses, I was like, yeah, ha, ha, ha,
ha. I would never do that.
What an idiot. Who would do that?
Well, speaking of him.
Yeah.
Still talking about him.
Would it be, there's going to be a time in the future, Pete, where you and I record something. We don't have to talk about that son of a bitch.
When he dies, the celebration is going to be so overt. And so international, and people are going to be in the streets. And
it's going to be like the Ewoks.
If in fact he dies of natural causes or something, if he were if someone were to kill the president, I don't think you would have that kind of celebration. Or maybe it would. I don't know. That would.
I think you would.
You do.
I think you would.
Even if he died violently, you think?
I think maybe it'd be a bigger celebration. If we'll be honest.
Really? Ugh. Yeah. That would probably be bad.
Be a tough couple of days, but it would be what it would be.
Yeah, I mean it is a day that will come for all of us, and it couldn't come sooner because just every day we have to wake up and deal with this, like front and center. And just when you think maybe you're going to have some quiet, he shares a picture of the former president and his wife as apes, and it's like, oh man, we gotta deal with this. We have to address this, and we do have to address it. He is our leader. He is destroying us and embarrassing us and humiliating us on a regular basis. So we do have to keep talking about him, unfortunately. And
you want to know something about that, Pete? I've only imagined the death in an anticipatory, celebratory way with a couple of people, and they were abusive father figures. And one of
somebody else's death in that way.
Yeah. And what's funny about, and it's not funny, there's nothing funny about it, is that the dynamic that we're in right now is exactly the same as an abusive household. And one of the things that happens in your mind is you suddenly become very fascinated with the idea of nature taking its course and the problem of the abusive person being taken out of the equation. So
Right.
we're all that for me, that's old hat. It's very similar and very reminiscent
Yeah,
for
I've
anybody
never
who's
I've
wondering
never had
that.
luckily, I've never, had that. I've never wished for someone's death, ever, or, like, a relief that it would be to have that person gone, and it seems dehumanizing to do, but, yeah, we live in this psychosocial world of his, like, we live in his world every day, we're part of it, and it dominates, it continues to dominate in so many ways, the news cycle, our opportunity, our freedom increasingly, and obviously our democracy. Haven't talked to you in a minute. Where do you think we're at, kind of post Minneapolis? And I should make sure that I mention my friend Adam, who I had on the show from Minneapolis. Wanted to make sure I mentioned that just because they've drawn down there in Minneapolis does not mean it is over. He wanted to make sure that I make this point that 700 stormtroopers left, but 2,000 remain. My daughter's school just announced virtual learning as an option. I still have to shuttle people around to hide them from the Nazis. This shit is not over, not even close. Media is saying it's over. It is not. So passing that
Yeah,
along.
and I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be my first point about this, which is I don't know if you remember this. I felt like I was losing my fucking mind back in 2020. Do you remember during the BLM protests when they were at their height? You would turn on the TV every night, or you'd go out in the streets yourself, and you'd be like, "There is a revolutionary situation taking place." Right? Where it felt like any number of things could happen. And then all of a sudden the media was like, well, we're good on that.
Mm.
Right? All of a sudden the biggest protest movement in American history just kind of fizzled out in the media. We're in the place where there is revolutionary energy that is building among the masses, which you and I have talked about. That has always been, we've talked about how bad things were. And then at the end, you would say, what's something that gives you hope or something? And I would say, I think there is small d democratic revolutionary energy that is building. I think this is what I've been looking for a while because we don't trust our politicians. We don't trust our media. We understand that our experience is different than what's going on. And I actually think that distrust of politicians, distrust of the media, distrust of the institutions, I think is a huge net positive. I feel right now that people, unfortunately, are having to learn what solidarity and collective action means. And they're starting to understand that we can't just wait around for elections and we can't just expect the media to portray these things or the politicians to treat them with respect. I actually think that distrust and cynicism that's building is really, really good in terms of what needs to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I can't. I don't know if I can get on board with that. Maybe you can convince me. But distrust in institutions and expertise to me is a bad thing.
There's a difference between a distrust in institutions and experts. Institutions, particularly in the United States of America, were built with the idea of anti-democratic energies in mind in the first place. And we've been waiting on the institutions to save us, and they've fallen by the wayside, either collaborating or capitulating. And people say, it was back in, I think it was 2019, 2020. Somebody had me on a show and they said, what do you make of Donald Trump going after our legal system and people losing trust in it? And the truth is our legal system does not deserve trust. We know that it is a stratified system. It's racist, it's sexist, and it's also, classist. So like, I think starting to recognize those things, it brings us closer to the reality of the situation, which means that we have to do something. And we can't just wait on those institutions to save us. Experts, I think, are a different entity altogether, but there's a conversation with that.
Yeah, for sure. You're talking about the energy that is being created as a result of the actions of the federal government of the Trump regime, and the energy that is creating this kind of solidarity that we've wanted to see amongst people who weren't necessarily paying attention, more apathetic people whose lives have been upended, disrupted in places like Minneapolis, where we are not post. It is not over. There will be more cities and communities and towns that they're going to try to send ICE in. And also the message is getting out that while they're trying to make somehow soften their image, they're not actually changing their tactics. So the messaging might be a little different, but it seems like the tactics are going to continue. At least that's what I've read.
Yeah, that's absolutely the point. And that is For me, as somebody who does want revolutionary energy and small d democracy to really take off, these are dangerous times because there's so much, and we've all been calling for ICE. The most moderate position in the United States of America at this point should be the abolishment of ICE. That's not arguable. This is not, you can't reform this. And meanwhile, we're being told by Democratic politicians, particularly corporate Democrats, it's resign, rein in, restrain, or whatever. You can't do that with these people. You don't want to take the problem and just hide it. The issue isn't let's make this less loud and less openly fascistic. The idea is that we have to reform is not allowing them to exist anymore. It's abolishing them and sending the people who are responsible for this to jail. And that to me at this point is a moderate position. And I really hate that it's being conflated with a bunch of capitulation.
It seems that white people being killed in the streets, particularly Renee Good and Alex Preddy, was created an affected change in a way I wish it wouldn't have to, but there's no doubting that it did. Thoughts?
100%. And part of what happened, the history of this country is so misunderstood. What really made the civil rights movement of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, what really made it successful was that the people who participated in that, they made people watch on TV what happened when Black people went into these places, when they got abused by the police. White privilege in this country, particularly middle-class white privilege, is built on the idea that bad fascistic things can happen over here, but it doesn't touch me. Right. And this right now, this idea that immigrants, maybe they get rounded up, but like when good white people get, rounded up or they get hurt or they get killed. And by the way, like these people are absolute martyrs and victims, just the same as God knows how many Hispanic people have died at this point. We don't even know. We don't have a clue how many people have died at this point. But if that is what it takes for people to realize that quote unquote status quo American life is built on suffering and murder and exploitation, then so be it. And maybe we can get to the point of understanding that this is not an aberration. It is the logical conclusion of what's been coming down this road for a while.
And we've seen this before in this country and others. Those with resources and comfort and opportunity have to put themselves on the line. A lot of people are comparing Preddy and Good to Schwerner and Cheney of the Mississippi burning story, obviously, that were killed, and so many others as well, who, Dr. King described as being the ones who were complacent, the moderate white folks who were doing nothing, even though rhetorically they would like to see change, but they wouldn't do anything to upend order. That's exactly what Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and so many other people, not only in Minneapolis, but in cities across the country, are doing. White people putting their bodies, their cars between ICE and those marginalized communities, and doing a lot more as well behind the scenes, carting people around, driving kids around, covering their shift, driving them to work, homeschooling, and so many other things, people stepping up. Yep. And that's exactly what has to happen in America right now. And is it legal to interfere? There's a difference, I think, between protesting and impeding the efforts of law enforcement. But I'm for impeding the efforts of law enforcement in this case. I'm for that. Is a history of nonviolent, peaceful disruption in this country and others. And that is what always is one path to the promised land, if you will, to working, to beating them back.
There's so much of what you just said, which I think is accurate, that I want to comment on and expand on. But I will disagree with you on one thing, which is I personally, and this is controversial and it's uncomfortable, I believe that they deserve violence. If somebody comes into your neighborhood and they murder people and they steal your children and they steal your neighbors, like if they didn't have a badge on, they would be bandits.
I'm not saying I don't think they deserve violence. I'm not calling for violence, but I wouldn't have any problem with violence. The problem is when you commit violence against federal agent, they will kill you.
By the way, I completely agree. But the point that I am making
is I think lose if you become violent is my point.
I mean, the way that you drove out fascists whenever they were taking control is when they came in your neighborhood, you beat the shit out of them. I will say one of the things that I keep seeing, which I think is very fascinating and it gets shortchanged, which is you see these videos of like ICE dining, they're having lunch or breakfast or something, and the community members are like blowing their whistles and they're like, you need to leave. And the people are standing there and they're looking at them and they're like, you need to understand that this situation has gotten to the point where if you don't leave and if you continue doing what's happening, you're going to get the shit kicked out of you.
Right.
And I do think that that's important because what's happening is crisis brings clarity. The people of Minnesota, that's not just like Democrats or libs in the street. We have people who are not thinking in terms of Democrat or Republican or whatever. They're literally saying, you cannot steal our children.
Right.
You cannot murder our neighbors in cold blood. You can't do this. And I think that that really is a lot different than what we've been talking about. There's a difference between going on and talking about like what's going to happen in the midterms. Well, the Democrats +5, whatever it is. We're literally talking about an existential threat that doesn't care about red versus blue at this point. And it really brings to bear, if you live in Minneapolis, Pete, you've got people who are spending their days standing outside of elementary schools. Parents, non-parents, they're standing outside of elementary schools because there are people with guns and gas who are breaking their way in and they're saying, you're not getting in here. And that to me, it's horrific that it's happening. But what it's done is it's exposed something. This shit has been going on for forever. The United States of America has done this around the world. It's just come back to bear. Law enforcement has done this shit in black neighborhoods, in brown neighborhoods, in poor neighborhoods over and over and over again. There has to be a connection that this is the logical conclusion of all of this. And eventually at some point, like you said, and this is important, and going back to civil rights, the time changed when all of a sudden white college students started going on those rides. And they were like, if they die, I die. And because you and I are the same and we are connected. And I think that makes all of the difference. And that's what's going to mean either success or failure. And failure cannot be an option at this point.
You say they're not targeting, it's not red or blue, but they are targeting democratically run cities and states.
Oh, no, I'm saying that the people in the streets are not thinking in terms of like that type of politics at this point.
They're thinking about their friends and their neighbors, right? Yep. I mean, like, you can't go into a city as diverse as Minneapolis with a history like that, not to mention the organizations and solidarity created as a result of the murder of George Floyd by the state, by the policeman there, and think that there's not going to be a reaction to it because people protect their neighbors. I keep talking about Brooklyn because I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I was there with my daughter the other day and it was just like a bunch of 30-year-old diverse people. And the most diverse group of people ethnically I'd ever seen. And in every way diverse, people wearing whatever the fuck they want and nobody caring, nobody just getting along. It's like you can't go into cities with that kind of diversity and attack them because those people live there because they love the diversity. That's it.
Well, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we're talking about the same city where the BLM movement started.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a coincidence. The BLM, not the BLM movement, but the BLM protest, of course, after George Floyd. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that this is all based off of a recognition that this is small d democracy where these cradles exist in the communities you're talking about. Because actually, they always say that diversity isn't our strength. What you actually learn in these places is you learn that diversity isn't just like, oh, you've got so many of these people and so many of these people. It's where people start to realize, oh, all of the things we've been told separate us and pit us against each other, that's all bullshit. Like, we're actually all connected. We're all interconnected in these communities, and we'll take care of each other. And we're not going to have people, regardless of political party affiliation or agenda, they're not going to tell us what separates us. And that, to me, is actual solidarity. That's where actual revolutionary energy takes place. I don't think it's a coincidence that it's taking place where it is, or that we're seeing the outcome that we're seeing.
A lot of people have different scenarios and narratives about the incentives and impulses of the federal government, the regime, in terms of how they're using ICE and how they're using immigration and the narrative that they're saying. And one of those narratives goes to the midterm elections. They want people to be violent so that they can claim martial law, so that they can take over governments. The president and many of his minions, he somehow convinced people to think that, nationalizing the elections would be a good idea, something Americans generally don't like. Every American state runs their own election. Which narrative do you think is most likely for these midterm elections, or none at all?
All of them. And that's the thing. I think a lot
We're
of
all
people like to.
gullible.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like to use a silver bullet, and I think it's one way or it's another. It reminds me of the old question, Pete, where people would ask me, "Is it a grift or is it fascism?" And the answer is both at the
Right. Yeah.
exact same time.
Yeah, both can be true.
And when it comes to this, I know that they would cancel elections or rig elections because they have said as much. And because every authoritarian hates democracy, we've seen managed liberalism, managed democracy all around the world. If they can figure out how to rig an election, they will do it. And I think it's one of those things where I don't know, Pete. I look at something like the midterms. And I think about if the Democrats win this shit, and I've been down this road. I don't expect, like, if the Democrats win in November, if there's free and fair elections, that's going to solve it. Why? Because I pay attention to what has happened in recent history. I look at how things work. I see how everything moves. I don't think that's going to fix it. At the same time, I look at the idea of these elections being canceled or rigged. I wouldn't put it past them. I'm not taking it for granted that there will be elections, and there's a part of me that's like, well, if they cancel the elections, at least we'll see things as they are. And we'll be like, oh, this is not going to be something that we can vote ourselves out of. This is not going to be something that a savior or a messiah or a hero is going to save us from. I look at this whole thing and everything is on board. Everything is a possibility at this point. And what I'm doing, it's something I've had to learn in my own healing and my own recovery. And this is really important. I'm not living in the past and I'm not living in the future. I'm living in the present. And quite frankly, the people who were doing this, you can talk about Donald Trump. He's an absolute fucking buffoon. He doesn't know what's going on most of the days. He is decomposing in real time. There are very serious people that are spending billions of dollars to destroy democracy. They work around the clock. I do not have 9 months to give them. I can't just sit around waiting for what's going to happen in 9 months. I have to take every day as its own and as its own battle, because otherwise I'm just going to give them tons of ground that they don't deserve.
Got to ask you about this SAVE Act idea. They passed it before in the House. They're going to pass it probably, maybe they'll pass it again in the House. The Senate likely will not pass it, probably won't become law, but it sure is a bad idea. And just going back to the idea of, a lot of people are convinced that we need voter ID, that you should have to have ID when you go to vote. You and I both know that that's always been a red herring, a scapegoat, nonsense, and completely unnecessary. And we also know that the reason for it is to disenfranchise likely Democratic voters, black and brown folks, young people, people on college campuses, etc. But they want to make it way, way harder. They want you to have your birth certificate. Who has their birth certificate to go and vote? But more importantly, this is a solution looking for a problem. There is no problem. How do you convince people? I mean, you have to be a pretty dumb, ignorant person to think that, to believe that undocumented people are voting illegally in elections. They just aren't anywhere ever.
No, and one of the things I always have to have one of these conversations. I get in these strategy meetings and we start talking about this, or I'll have a conversation with somebody from the other side, a MAGA person who talks about election security. And here's the truth, Pete, and you've seen enough of this, and you've been on this rock enough go rounds to know the biggest problem with US elections, it isn't fraud, it's getting people to vote.
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue. Is that a lot of people in this country are either so disillusioned with politics that they don't want to go to the polls.
Yeah, like 80 million people voted for Trump, like 77 million people voted for Kamala, and like 85 million people did not vote at all, something around there.
I don't remember if it was 2016 or 2018. I will never forget this for the rest of my life. Pete, you remember when Popeyes brought out the chicken sandwich? You remember when that was the biggest thing in the fucking world?
I don't. I don't
What? You
remember
don't
when
remember that?
When Popeyes.
Popeyes brought out like a fried chicken sandwich. Do you
Oh
remember
yeah,
that?
I do. A couple years ago, they made like this big deal about their new chicken
You
sandwich.
remember? And then everybody started coming out with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pete, I will never forget. It was either 2016 or 2018. I would say consequential elections myself. I went to vote. I lived in Statesboro, Georgia at the time. I was a professor. I went to the polling place and I walked immediately in. I was handed a ballot, no wait whatsoever. There were maybe 2 other people in there. I got out of there. I got in my car. I took a right on the main road. The line into Popeyes for that fucking chicken sandwich was probably 4 miles long. People don't want to vote. That's not the problem. So every argument that I have with it, exactly as you said, it is a front. And what happens with it, and this is the most useful thing. What happens with it is, instead of arguing about the conspiracy theory with people who are for this, I interact with the emotion. I say, oh, it sounds like free and fair elections are important to you and democracy is important to you. And they're like, yeah, of course it is. And then you have a conversation. You're like, hey, do you trust the people in Washington? No, of course not. All of a sudden you're together. You're not even having a conversation about this bullshit. It's all cooked up by the think tanks and institutes that we talked about a second ago. Always.
Just to be clear, because there's some people watching live, if you think that undocumented people are voting in our elections, you're dumb. You're a dumb person.
It doesn't work that way.
Well, but why would you? Why would they do that? Why would an undocumented person commit that crime?
And by the way, the whole idea, Pete, is that the Democrats and their associated groups and nonprofits are giving away money and freebies to undocumented immigrants to go vote in the elections. They won't even give away freebies for their actual voters.
There is no money and freebies to vote. That's not.
There's nothing for anybody.
Can't vote. Why would you vote? Why would you commit that crime? Why would an undocumented person go and commit that? And how? How would they do it? When you go to it's so dumb. I'm sorry, I'm wasting your time on this. But when you go to vote, you have to go to your polling place and you have to find your name. You have to say your name. Like someone should do. There should be a million comedy sketches where someone walks in and it's just like, I'm Jared. Or you know, some.
I'm as white gets.
Right.
Okay. I grew up in Southern Indiana. All right. When I was a child, one of my nicknames was Bub. Okay. You want to know how white I am? And I have an ID. I have all this stuff. I go in to vote at my polling place. I'm afraid they're going to tell me no. I feel like I'm pulling one over on people, right? I'm afraid that my ballot's going to get rejected. My fucking name is Jared Yates Sexton. All right. The idea that an undocumented immigrant is going to go in and just be like, yeah, absolutely, let's commit a crime right now in front of everybody who's looking.
I mean, the comments, people are so stupid in the comments. I mean, I'm just, they're kind of fun, but like somebody says they give them driver's license and that's all they need. That's not true. What is your driver's license name? What's the name on the driver's license? Where are you when you go in? You have to register to vote. I think that these people don't vote, these people that have opinions, because they don't know that when you register to vote, you have to have ID. But then when you go to vote, you just say your name. And the comedy sketch would be like some Asian guy showing up who's an undocumented person and be like, hi, my name is Giuseppe Antonucci. I'm voting for Giuseppe.
I'm Paul Smith. Well, and by the way, Pete, you want to talk about how crazy?
Just one more time for the people watching. If you think undocumented people are voting in our elections, you live at the very top of dumb mountain. Sorry, Jared.
Also, it's a racist idea to begin with anyway, because I'm sorry, but in 2024, Donald Trump and the Republicans picked up numbers among the Hispanic population.
Right.
So everybody's going to go vote. It's so dumb. I can't do it. Can't do it.
I mean, of all the crimes you would commit, it just wouldn't. You only commit crimes that have a chance of a payoff, something good. Stealing.
You're
what are you doing? You're not affecting the election.
Your payoff is that a state rep who will never do anything for you.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's the crime. You're going to put. And by the way, Pete, last time I checked, aren't the Republicans always saying that the undocumented people are so afraid of being sent back to their countries? But the one thing that they're going to risk all that on, getting sent back to the country they don't want to do, is to get some state rep elected. That's what this is about.
The guy in the chat, you don't have to do any of this in California or New York. Yeah, in every state in the country, bro. I'm sorry, you do have to register to vote. Then you can vote. You don't just walk in and vote. Your name is on a list, and you walk in and say, I'm that person.
I can't believe we're talking about
if you believe in the conspiracies around undocumented people voting, it's because you don't vote. It's because you've never gone to vote. You don't understand the process.
If you believe that, I'll take you a step further. It's not just that you're dumb and you don't understand things. If you believe that, you are a latent white supremacist.
Well, sure.
You literally believe in white replacement theory. That's what you believe in.
Yeah.
Even if you're not comfortable with it, guess what? You're on a train. You're on the train, which is white replacement theory. The second thing that I want to say, Bill Barr deserves to go to hell for the damage that he has done to American democracy.
Well, what did he do?
He told everybody that this shit's not happening, that there's no evidence of it. When he was Trump's attorney general, he told everybody there's absolutely no evidence. Bill Barr has done everything possible to destroy democracy in the United States of America. And he told I cannot believe that this is something somebody's actually arguing. That's insane.
It's, and I mean, millions of the majority of
believe it.
Of this, and there's just zero. No one can ever provide any evidence that undocumented people are voting, and certainly that any number of undocumented, when they do, it's an accident or an error, and that any outcome of any election anywhere at any level for fucking dog catcher or president has been affected by undocumented people. Again, the dumbest people live here.
I just want to put one thing out there for because I feel dumber for having had this portion of the conversation.
I know, I'm sorry.
I feel like I suddenly went colorblind. I wouldn't be able to tie my shoes if I had to. Like, I want to give a little bit of context for people. There was this guy named Bill Cooper. He was Alex Jones before Alex Jones, for people who aren't aware of Bill Cooper. And Bill Cooper wrote a book called Behold the Pale Horse, which is the Bible of modern American conspiracy theories. And he said something in this book, Pete, that has stuck with me forever when it comes to the Republican Party and conspiracy theorists. And you know what he said? He said, I know that conspiracies are real because if I was in power, I would participate in a conspiracy to keep that power. Everyone who says the Democrats are paying undocumented immigrants to vote in elections want to fix elections and want to rig elections. They're projecting what it is that they want to do. That's it. Every right-wing accusation is a confession, period.
They want to make voting harder. It's worth mentioning the fact that countries like Australia have compulsory voting. You automatically are registered when you get your license, and then you have to vote. It's the law. And I believe that we should have that same law here.
We should have compulsory voting. We should have a holiday the day of the vote. I mean, it doesn't end. It doesn't end. The things we should do.
Pete Dominick, you may want to do research off of CNN. Listen, stupid. You're stupid. You're the dumbest. You people are. The fact that you think undocumented people are voting in our elections makes you. I wish you would say it under your actual name in front of people. And then I wish you would find me evidence of it. Dumb. It's the dumbest crime. There should be a show called The Dumbest Crime.
The only thing I can think of that would be dumber is if you committed the crime of depositing money in a bank using a forged signature.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that I can think of that's actually dumber than this.
That's pretty dumb. But who's paying you to? No one. For me, I make money off of subscribers, individuals.
That's another thing. Okay, again, because this is such a dumb segment, I have to class this up a little bit.
And it's only because I'm reading the comments on YouTube.
Well, it is what it is. You can't read the comments. The idea that all the people are being paid by George Soros, Pete, you know why everyone claims that? Because the entire right wing is astroturfed by a bunch of billionaires. Nobody watches their shows. Nobody downloads their podcasts. Nobody buys their books. Nobody goes to see Melania. It's a bunch of billionaires who are paying for all this shit for them.
I went to see Melania.
Oh, God, what?
I thought I was seeing a different movie, and I walked in and Melania was playing. And I stayed because it was such a quiet theater.
Stop. You did not.
I wanted to be alone, so I watched Melania. Also, you pronounce words weird every once in a while, and there's never any way to predict it. But you pronounce people's names wrong. Like it's not Melania, it's Melania.
If you think for a second that I'm going to learn how to pronounce that asshole's name correctly, you are.
No, I know, but you pronounce good people's names wrong too. I believe.
I'm from Greene County, Indiana. I'm lucky I can read, Pete.
You said Desmond Tutu one time. I thought that was.
I did not say Desmond.
You said Gindi. Okay. You said Martin Luther King, which I thought was really weird. All right, let's move on to Jeffrey Epstein, which I bet is how you pronounce his name.
The New York financier? That's Jeffrey Epstein?
The New York financier. What do you make of this, man? I think this is crazy the victims are never going to give up. We are going to see this. There is going to be some kind of justice. I'm sure of it. You probably aren't.
No, I'm not sure of it. But I will say, I was talking about revolutionary energy earlier. Like, there's so many different things that need to happen, but if there were to be something of a revolution that is needed in this country, everybody who showed up in those files, including Nick DiPaolo, would
Apollo,
Nick DiPaolo's, yeah.
the comedian.
You didn't know that?
What are you? He's an old friend of mine. I mean, we're not friends anymore, but
Well, I don't know, Pete. You might want to reconsider your connection.
Nick DiPaolo
Nick DiPaolo is in the Epstein files.
How so? For what reason? I mean, you could be in it for being talked about. Like,
no, he traded emails with Epstein.
No way.
True story. I thought you would like that. Yeah. Everybody in it needs to be held responsible. Everybody. Absolutely everybody, because the entire system is corrupted. What I've written about on Dispatches from a Collapsing State is it is proof that this entire system, whether it's presided over by a bunch of pedophiles, which it obviously is, the people who are hurting other people, including keeping us impoverished, keeping us oppressed, keeping us exploited, hurting people around the world, like, it's a class of abusers. And we have to recognize that's the truth. We can't hide behind this fantasy that, like, there are, like, benevolent leaders amongst us. There's not. This whole thing is just corrupt top to bottom.
I had to read about it.
I know you are. I knew exactly what you were doing.
Bobby Slayton invited him, another comedian I know, to Jeffrey Epstein's house for dinner. Woody Allen is there. And DiPaolo says, he said when he at the dinner, he said, "Holy shit, I'm the only non-pedophile in the bunch here." He actually isn't. Like, he was always happily married, Nick. And I never saw him, like, he says things. I never saw him do anything to anybody. He's got some really horrible views, obviously. And he's also a very funny guy. But it is.
Hey, Pete.
Anything. I just want to.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You can sit with that later.
Here comes the victimhood. Who's more of a victim than right-wing white Christian nationalists?
Well, I mean, that's all they are. And by the way, it's textbook abusers. Abusers hurt other people and then claim they're the victim at the exact same time. It scales up from the personal up to the political. It's all of them.
Fair enough. So you don't think that? All right. Well, then moving on from necessarily where we're going with the Epstein files. I mean, by the way, Steve Bannon's been heavily implicated, and the right seems to be turning on him, which I think is a great thing, because he's a very influential, very powerful, very strategic guy.
No, absolutely. I mean, Bannon being all over this, I wasn't shocked by it because, you know, if you actually look at the history of, like, far right fascist authoritarian movements, they always have shit like this. Like, they have people who are, some of them are addicted to the abuse. Some of them are, you know, whether it's pedophiles or perverts or abusers, whatever it is. Others are obsessed with the occult parts of it. There's a reason, of course, why so many of these things incorporate these elements. And the whole truth of it is that, like, the far right is always going to have something like this. The architects of it, the ideologues of it, they're always going to be involved in this shit. So I wasn't shocked to see Bannon all over the place.
Yeah. Ugh, so gross. He's the worst. What do you think of this theory now that you're seeing what happened in the Republican Party and kind of the Tea Party movement, where a whole bunch of establishment Republicans lost their seats in Congress to radical right-wing conspiracy theorists? In that case, something similar is happening to the Democratic Party establishment. What do you think about that theory that a lot of people are, I think, taking pretty seriously? I mean, you can see certainly hallmarks of it. Do you think it's true?
It's either going to happen that the establishment Democrats are going to be replaced by a new class of politicians that take things seriously and aren't corrupt, or there's going to be a new party. I don't think there's any in between there. And I think I've been telling people, I wrote a white paper not too long ago that this was going to be a stress test for the Democratic Party of whether or not it's going to survive going forward. I think that's what we're about to watch.
All right. Well, I have a million more questions for you, but I've already taken up so much of your time. I can't believe it went by so fast.
Well, I mean, you know, time flies when you find out Nick DiPaolo is hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein.
It's crazy. I was probably with him earlier that night. Nick, not Epstein. I don't know how that was. Oh my God. Yep. We used to open. Me and Nick DiPaolo used to both open for Artie Lang. and it would be me, then Nick, then Artie. And so I went out, I did my set.
That's a nightmare blunt rotation for me, my friend.
Oh yeah,
that's a tough one.
And I introduced Nick, and Nick comes out and he goes, "Give it up for Pete Dominick. He's a Make-A-Wish kid. His wish was to open for Artie Lang." So he was the most insulting, funny guy to hang out with. But he went way, 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 way right.
Do you think that's how Jeffrey Epstein felt about him?
I don't know. But yeah, they did have dinner together. Apparently, that's gross. Well,
Yeah.
listen, we can find you at the Muckrake Podcast, and we can find you at Substack. And where else are people finding you these days? Or is that?
I mean, those are the two. Oh, I also do a weekly show on Wednesdays at 12 noon with Danielle Moody called The Check-In. We're talking about the emotional toll of living under fascism.
I love you two together. I've seen that you go live sometimes, and I always see it too late on Substack. Do you go live on Substack? Yeah, yep. Danielle's great, old friend of mine, and the two of you together is a great duo. Love to see it, and we'll be watching the next time you do it. Jared, as always, thank you for watching. Thank you to the trolls for joining us. Undocumented people do not vote in our elections. Deal with it. Find one and send them our way. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Later.